Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, lovelies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 31. I am just truly honored to be here with all of you today. It is actually a cold fall afternoon, and we are about a week post-election, so it feels like the perfect time to be able to just slow down a little bit and reach out to all of you and connect. I know that the election has meant many things for many people, and I just feel like this interview that I have to share today is something that's so fitting for just being able to slow down a little bit and connect with ourselves and really look at it as a place of alignment, and just being able to look at it as a place of nurturance. I had the pleasure of talking with Katherine Kelly. Actually, a couple months ago, we recorded this interview, and I've been waiting for the perfect time to share it, and I just feel like this is the perfect time. Katherine Kelly is a licensed holistic health psychologist, also an author and speaker, and has written the book Soul Health, Aligning with Spirit for Radiant Living. And I really just enjoyed our conversation because it was one that was very eye-opening to me in a lot of ways. And she put a lot of words to, talking about our soul and what that really is, and how her work is really dedicated to all aspects of whole living. And that being something that is just such an important part of her work and really all of ours work as we really connect to what our souls are and what they mean for us within our own unscripted journey. So I'm really excited to be able to share this interview with you today. And I just know that you're going to get so much great information from Katherine, and she was just an absolute delight to have on the podcast. So without further ado, here's Dr. Kelly. Well, Katherine, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm super excited to be able to get to know you more and your work more and just spend this time together today. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Absolutely. I'm always thrilled to meet with like-minded folks and also share conversation about these kinds of things.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what it is like-minded folks, right? When I don't know who connected with who on LinkedIn, but I saw your stuff and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to reach out to her because I'm just so fascinated by the work that she does and really just how you conceptualize it. And so I wanted to kind of learn more. And it is fun to be able to follow that energy of like-minded people and just learn who they are and what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think if we stayed in our own little worlds, they'd stay small. So, social media has been great to reach out to people around the world. And I love to hear what other folks are doing. So, yeah, I can't wait to share what I do and see how it can blend with what you do.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I've been doing the podcast for almost 2 months now. And I am just blown away by the people that I'm meeting. And, I've obviously interviewed some friends that are, kind of in their professional roles, but I've also interviewed people that I've just met via social media that I'm fascinated by. And it's like, my mind is just expanding. And, you're over in North Carolina, correct?
Right.
And
right.
so just being able to kind of go coast to coast here on this conversation, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
So, Katherine, I gave kind of more your formal introduction before we started recording, but do you want to share a little bit about kind of you with the audience so we can kind of get to know you before we dive into our conversation?
Sure. And I'll try to give you the abbreviated version. We're talking about soul health today, which is a concept that, again, not too many people know about until they really start expanding their own worlds about this. So I was trained traditionally as a counseling psychologist, but then basically did a lot of my training in medical environments. I was always interested in health. And so as I was kind of emerging as my own therapist, what was really interesting, I tell this story because I'm sure, will resonate with this, but most practitioners I know are trained in the idea of sickness, not health. And what was so synchronistic for me when I started my master's degree was that I was also working, I got a job working for the student health promotion department of the same university, where I was basically learning about the National Wellness Institute's wellness model, while in my therapy program, I was learning about sickness.
Oh, wow. What an interesting kind of like paradox that was going on right in front of you.
It was crazy good, because what was so wonderful about it was that, over in my program, I'm learning these wonderful concepts and how to really help people feel better. But on the other hand, I started recognizing that, wait a minute, we're not even talking about proactive measures toward health and wellness and emotion. We're talking about crisis intervention and how to fix, wounds and things like that. And so, what was really beautiful for me was that as I was learning the National Wellness Institute's model and learning the psychotherapy approaches, I started merging them. And so when I started doing my intakes or my initial interviews, I started weaving in a lot about health and wellness that none of my colleagues, none of my fellow students were working in. And then as I went on to my Ph.D., same thing. As I went in to do my postdoc with the Family Medicine Department in Missouri, same thing. They were like, wait a minute, how did you learn this? We didn't get this part of it. And so what was interesting was it just started, I used the word evolve a lot, conscious evolution, and it just evolved for me very naturally that as I was learning psychotherapy, I was also recognizing that, standard approaches to health and wellness, whether it's emotional health or physical health, really only look at a couple different angles of life. But as I was going through, seeing 8 to 10 clients a day, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, the National Wellness Institute's model was really wonderful as a foundation. But when you sit with people day in, day out, you realize there are more aspects to health and wellness than what is even taught out there. So as I started developing this holistic health model, I basically developed 10 branches. I used the idea of a tree, which is, used for lots of things, but it's such a perfect metaphor of our own evolution and our own growth. So I have these 10 branches of the model that to me are really all of the aspects of the human condition that each and every one of us have to wrestle with and figure out in order to feel well. And to me, and I'm going to dig in right away with the soul health part of this, is that, and this can sound very dramatic when I say this, but I think it's so true, is that I really believe that our soul will be our salvation. Because if you think about health and wellness, if you think about everything that's taught out there, number one, we don't ever talk about the soul, which is our most precious, deepest part of ourselves that, basically goes on and on. We don't oftentimes even look at how to integrate all of the aspects of ourselves to feel well. So I know I segued right into kind of talking about the model.
I love it.
But I jokingly say if there was ever a time where I would get a tattoo that I wouldn't get tired of, it would be this model. I would have it somewhere on my body because to me it just makes so much sense. And it's all about our growth and our evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's just a profound way to be thinking about ourselves in terms of wellness versus sickness, right? In terms of healing versus wounded. And so talk a little bit about this model so we can kind of really start to understand it and dive into it, because I know the audience will be just fascinated by it.
Absolutely. So again, if you can picture a tree in your mind, and it's a very full, rich tree, because the whole object of this is that we are here to evolve toward our ultimate radiance and our ultimate wellness and sense of well-being and wholeness. So picture this tree, and you can actually go to my website at www.drkatherineTkelly.com or go to soulhealthmodel.com, and it should pull that up as well. But basically, when people think about health or wellness, the first thing that pops into their mind, of course, is physical wellness. And maybe people who have had a little bit more idea or education will bring in things like psychological wellness, maybe some social wellness, spiritual wellness. But my 10 branches are the physical, the psychological, the social, the interpersonal, and then basically environmental is there, because that is actually, I don't think we can interact with the world unless we've got our environment around us. But then we have financial, and financial wellness is not mentioned in any of the wellness models out there. And so that's one of them that I added to my model, because I don't know anybody who feels well if they don't feel balanced financially. Mm-hmm. Another thing is intellectual and occupational wellness, which again is generally part of the National Wellness Institute's model. But then the other two branches that people don't think about are the sexual health and also recreational health. And so those 10 branches really come together. And if you think about those, most people say, oh gosh, yeah, if one or more of these aspects of my life is out of whack, well, then no, I'm not going to feel well. So those are the branches, and I use that to depict the whole idea of the human condition. But then the trunk of the model is really about the soul and the soul's development and the soul's evolution. Because if you have a little flimsy tree, got all these branches, but if you have a little flimsy trunk that you don't really know yourself, you don't know how to honor yourself, you're going to get blown around pretty darn quickly, and you're not going to feel very resilient or able to cope with life. So that's kind of that sense of self, sense of knowing. But the other beautiful thing about a tree, and I don't like the idea of splicing a tree in half to see the rings at all, since I'm a tree lover, but the whole idea of a tree is that their DNA is programmed for automatic growth no matter what. But if you think about a human, look how many times we stop ourselves from growing or evolving, even though we know that what we're doing is keeping ourselves stuck. So the whole idea of soul health is a very proactive, very evolutionary approach in terms of if you can get to know yourself within the 10 branches of the human condition. And then there's a chapter in my book that I completely talk about stewardship to your soul. How do you become a better steward to your soul? Then it basically empowers you to create this life of radiance rather than sickness like what we started out talking about. So it's a very dynamic model, but it's a very easy and user-friendly model.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of thinking about that idea of the trunk, right? That our soul is the trunk and that it needs to be solid. And so it doesn't kind of, like you said, flop around in the wind. And so thinking, how would you define, oh my gosh, this is a crazy question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Probably not.
How do you define or conceptualize soul?
Great question. No,
okay,
that's not a crazy question at all. In the sense of my book, what I try to do is keep it very simple because, there are so many conceptualizations that get very complicated. But to me, the soul is the essence of who we are. And if you think about how hard it is to even get to know yourself, because we're not really taught as young ones to get to know ourselves. We're taught basically to think outside of ourselves, please others, accommodate others. And then what does that do? Especially in the psychotherapy world, it leads to a whole lot of what I call misalignment. That if we live for others, we don't necessarily know how to really make ourselves happy or healthy or radiant for that matter. So to me, the soul in the simplest form is basically sense of self. And so for everyday, conversation, it's sense of self and really understanding who you are at a deeper level. Now, I'm going to throw out a little more complicated definition because someone asked me 4 months ago, actually, about, okay, well, what does that mean related to source, and God? And it was funny because it took me a while to articulate this, but I basically said it's the, again, this is a little complicated, it's the energetic extension of source. So if we are created in God or universes, whatever terminology you use, in the likeness of God or universe, well, then we're just an extension of that. And so what really empowers people is the whole idea of not only am I dishonoring myself if I'm not taking care of my soul and my human condition of all those branches, but I'm really dishonoring source. Mm-hmm. And that seems to really help people go, wait a minute, I do need to commit to taking better care of myself and understanding myself and evolving. So soul is a complicated term if you make it complicated, but really in essence, all of us have a sense of soul. We just have to deepen that sense in order to really lead the kind of life that we always say we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that definition because it does sound so simplistic, but it also is one that's quite profound. And I think about it, especially in terms of women, of being able to have that sense of self and being able to differentiate from the messages that we got growing up about what it means to be a good girl or, yes, all these programming that we've gotten from media, family, relationships, and deprogramming that enough to be able to get in touch with who we really are and what our voice sounds like in amongst it all.
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. And boy, I don't know what your percentage of women to men are that you work with, but I think the thing is, both genders have a lot of challenges for learning about themselves and honoring themselves. But women in our country, at least, we have so many societal pressures, like you said, and we are taught from day one that it is selfish to think about yourself before thinking about others. And then we get into enabling situations, codependent situations, body image. I mean, we get into so many different things, but you are absolutely right that for women, it is really quite a challenge for people to learn how to honor their souls until they understand that that is really, in my world, in my understanding, what we're here for is to learn, much more how to honor ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that concept of being able to not only know but live this idea of self before others is one that has so many negative connotations. And
absolutely,
not only are they ones that we throw out ourselves, that self-shaming is just so, such an epidemic, but it's also something that we throw at other women.
Certainly.
Look at you doing for you. Why aren't you doing for others? And this just crazy bar that gets set by God only knows who. But I think that this idea of self before others is one that, even as I say it a couple times here, I'm noticing a sense in my body as I say it, because it is something that I do believe in, but it's also something that I'm constantly trying to find peace with, rather than moving towards whatever this expectation is of me personally and professionally. I mean, all those sorts of things. It does create a sense of feeling just in this moment talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, and you think about, again, I want to use the word societal, but the expectations all the way back to cavewoman days. We were the ones who basically had to take care of everything back at the cave. And then, whatever historical, role was next. But you think about the roles, women were always kind of the ones that had to give. We are natural caregivers. We're natural nurturers. And so it feels good to do that. But then look at how many folks are having difficulty with taking care of themselves physically, whether it's through emotional eating, whether it's through body image concerns, whether it's, we could just list.
Mm-hmm.
And historically, women in particular have never been allowed to have the same enjoyment of freedom, just in general. And so, it was always until recently, and this is what's fun to watch in our kind of global consciousness right now, is that women are becoming stronger, and they're realizing, wait a minute, I don't have to put myself last. I don't have to be in the background anymore. But it's a giant struggle for women, because that's historically, all we've known. And
right.
So, yeah, big struggle, but it's a beautiful, beautiful transformation that's happening.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. I've got my kids are 4.5, and I have a son and daughter. And my daughter recently, I don't know what developmental stage she's hitting, but she's in this place of obviously wanting to be bigger, wanting to be more grown up, And for the past, I would say twice over the past probably 3 weeks, she's got at bedtime completely emotional about whether or not she is going to be a good mom.
Wow.
And if she's going to be able to take care of her kids enough, and she's got her, her imaginary friends are two little twin babies, Leela and Marco, that she's always talking about Leela and Marco. And so, literally crying at night. It could be, the exhaustion of summer or swimming all day or whatever it is, she's exhausted. But at the end of the day, tears of, I don't know if I'm going to be a good enough mommy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to take care of Leela and Marco, and just so upset about it. And it's so interesting thinking about it in this view of, she's thinking about, is she going to be good enough taking care of others? And so the conversations I've been, my husband's looking at me wide-eyed, like, where is this coming from? Like, I have no idea, but let's slow down this moment and hear it. And so it's reassuring her of, that what she's got within her is good, and no matter what she decides to do, and that she's okay in this moment and those sorts of things. But thinking about this idea of self before others is, even at 4.5, she's getting this modeling of, am I going to be good enough taking care of others?
Right. Some kind of message that's already being ingrained.
Yes. Yeah. And it is. It's got my wheels turning now, thinking about, okay, where is she getting that message? What are the ways that I'm, unintentionally reinforcing that? Like, kind of, or where is she getting it from, of already thinking, am I going to be good enough taking care of others? And then so upset about that from a value place. Very interesting.
What just came into mind as you were talking about that is, yes, that started at a very young age, and luckily you can talk her through some of that. And what's interesting is, when women have lived that for so long, then when you try to encourage them to take care of themselves, there's extraordinary guilt or resistance. And so it is kind of an interesting thing. And one of the best tools really that women have is they know how to take care of other people. So you have the tools, you just need to learn how to transfer them to yourself to help you honor yourself just as much as you honor everybody else. And so once they understand, wait a minute, okay, I've got the skills, I just need to get past the impasse of wanting to take care of myself versus, this cadre of other people that are all around me.
I love that idea. I mean, I just love that concept because the truth is, as women, we absolutely have the skills.
Absolutely. And we're good at it.
we're exceptional at it. And so it's not being able or having to develop anything outside of what we already know. It's just being able to turn it inward and receive that. There's this book, I think it's called The Power of Receiving. And, it's such an interesting book because it talks about that we can be great givers, but that if we aren't also great receivers, then actually we're not that great of givers either, because we're not closing this natural loop, this natural cycle that has to happen in our daily interactions. And it was so powerful to read for myself because it was like, wow, I really do enjoy the feeling of giving, but am I also enjoying the feeling of receiving? And that for the natural order of the world, I have to be allowing both to happen to have that positive flow of energy.
Absolutely. And something, I have to throw this story out there because it's really extraordinary in lots of ways. I have a client who is actually a therapist in another city, and she drives to come see me every other week. And we did some really intense healing the last time she was here, and she was here this last Tuesday. And after we did that intense healing, I suggested to her, you need to spend the rest of the day really nurturing yourself and caring for yourself. And I said, go down to Trader Joe's and buy yourself some flowers. They're little cheap packs, but you can buy, plenty of them. And it was really interesting because she came in Tuesday and she was kind of really happy with the work we had done. But then she says, yeah, I went and bought myself a couple packs of flowers and put some in the kitchen and put some in the living room. And then when my husband came home that night, she said, he's like, where'd you get the flowers from? And she's like, oh, I bought them for myself. And he said, you've never let me buy you flowers. You didn't like them. You didn't think they were practical.
Oh, I just got chills.
Exactly. And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm so glad you've started a new trend because, if you think about, she had her toes done. He said, it's completely impractical to go get your toes done, but you'll do that, but you won't buy yourself flowers.
Yeah.
And she said, it's because I want my toes to look good for someone else. And so we had to dig into that whole idea of what is permissible to do for herself versus just for herself versus for someone else. And, I want to throw in the whole idea of self-love. And I'll tell you, it has become one of those sort of fluffy kind of, self-love, whatever.
Right next to self-care.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I have a monthly discussion group that I run that I basically call it the Soul Health Study. And it was this past Monday evening, and it was on becoming a better steward to your soul. That was the topic for the evening. And I said, okay, before we go there, I would like to ask you to just throw out, and there were 18 people in the room. I wanted you to throw out to me, what is it that you love most out of life? And they were saying, oh, I love my house. I love my kids. I love my dog. I love my cat. I love this. I love that, nature. And I just let them go on and on and on until it got a little quiet. And you could just still see that they were trying to figure out, okay, what else do I love? What else do I love? And I let it be quiet for about 2 minutes. And then I stopped them. I said, okay, so how long do you think it would take for someone in the room to say, I love myself? And dead silence.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating to see energetically them, each and every one of them just shift in their own way with whatever they were struggling with. And several in the room said, it would have never crossed my mind. We would have been sitting here a long time. And others said, gosh, I'm working on self-love, but it would have never crossed my mind. So, to me, soul health is all about soul love. Because of the fact that if we don't love ourselves, we are not going to honor ourselves fully. We're not going to fully embrace the flowers, $4 pack of flowers from Trader Joe's, or the, $25, trip to get our toes done, or, we're not going to fully embrace it. And so, I tried to open up this whole idea of, your soul is your most precious aspect of who you are. but how many people really try to nourish their souls and feed their souls, because that's what helps us love others more, is to love ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when you were saying giving and receiving, it's that whole idea of, are you as a population allowing yourself to be loved, and how can you if you're not really learning to receive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah,
just another aspect.
Absolutely. Well, and let's expand there a little bit, or kind of deepen a little bit there as you talk about that, is what are the ways that on a very practical level that we can start to create an energy of self-love? Because I think we were spot on a moment ago talking about women being so great as nurturers and loving and caring for others. And they have that tool, but needing to also start the practice of turning it inward. And so what are some practical ways of just being able to move to a place of incrementally loving ourselves more?
Well, and one of the things I suggested that night was when people, and I like to use the time that we take to brush our teeth as an example a lot of time, because it takes 1 to 2 minutes, brush, floss, 1 to 2 minutes, give or take. We're usually multitasking, doing something else. But I encourage people to use that amount of time to list at least 5 things that they appreciate about themselves. And that can be extraordinarily hard for some people, because they resist it, or they negate everything, or they start challenging themselves. But a very practical thing is to just, every time you brush your teeth, just start listing, oh, well, you know what? I appreciate that I'm brushing my teeth. This is one way I am taking care of myself. So if you have to get that basic, sometimes that's where you have to start. Or, I appreciate the fact that I got everything done that I needed to, so I could have 10 minutes to, read a magazine. So it's like, even if you only gave yourself the 10 minutes, that's more than you would have given yourself otherwise. So it's really giving yourself permission in one way or another to do the big things and the little things that nurture yourself. Now, I'm going to throw something out there that came up the other night, and I do in practice. And yet this is a very challenging thing. There's an estimation that the typical American has about 60,000 thoughts a day, but that about 2/3 of those are negative.
Wow.
That's over 40,000 thoughts a day that are negative thoughts. And so one exercise I encourage people to do, and it sounds very uncomfortable and distasteful, but I encourage people, when they have a negative thought about themselves, that they actually say it out loud. Mm. Now, that sounds contradictory to what you'd want to be doing, but the reason I encourage people to say it out loud is to hear it as if they were saying it to someone else, because they would never say those things to someone else.
Yeah, to allow it to come into awareness.
Yes. So it's a great intervention to stop you, to go, oh, wait, I don't want to finish that thought. And then the next step is basically to, if you can't fully give yourself an affirmation, if you're really struggling with being positive, at least to neutralize the negative thought. To say, I'm going to erase that, or I'm not going to have that thought. I'm not going to finish that thought. Because at least it starts that process of turning people more toward the positive and more toward affirmation, which, and again, affirmation, has become one of those woo-woo kind of fluffy thoughts. But really, if you think about it, if we have 60,000 thoughts a day and 40,000+ of them are negative, we've got to be doing something different.
Yes, absolutely. So. Well, and I think too that, we think about affirmations, like you said, is this overused term that people kind of also think is kind of fluffy, and what difference does it make? But I know concretely that when I affirm people around me, when I show gratitude, when I show appreciation, I see them light up. Like I see them behave differently. And so showing gratitude is something that isn't fluffy. Like it's something that we teach we want in our marriages, we want with our coworkers, we want parenting, we want those things. And we all see the proof in the pudding, right? And so affirmation is doing the same darn thing. Yeah. It's just inward. And so it really allows us to go, oh, that actually does work, because I can light myself up the way that I am so willing to light others up.
Absolutely. And, I talk about energy exchange with folks, and you nailed it right there, is that, when we give some sort of positive to someone else, it does give them a positive energy. And yet, if we think about all of the negative energy we direct toward ourselves, whether it's through a word or an action or a statement or a behavior or a lack of behavior, we throw a lot more negative towards ourselves. So it's an energy exchange too. So, and this is another basic one that sounds goofy, but if you're before or after brushing your teeth, if you stand in front of the mirror and at least smile towards yourself, it does shift things.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's so many little basic things you can do, but at the same time, sometimes people need to do the deeper work in order to really dismantle the shroud of the negativity in order to go, wait, I don't want to live like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but soul health is all about cleaning out what's not working and then filling up what is really going to make you feel radiant and enriched and full and nourished. And so, that to me is what soul health is about, is just really creating a healthy forest for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, such a beautiful thing to be able to, kind of empty out one in order to fill up another that is so much more beneficial in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know we've spent a little bit of time, but I've got one last question I have to ask. And
Sure.
I know this may take us on a whole different tangent, but one of the things that you shared when you and I were kind of exchanging emails back and forth that really stuck out for me was this idea that, kind of as a whole, we've left our soul behind in our pursuit of the modern life. And that to me it struck me, and it was on my mind for days after I read it. But I'd love for you to be able to share a little bit with the listeners, the audience, about what does that mean in terms of, what do you mean by leaving our soul behind kind of in that pursuit of the modern life? Because I think you've done such a beautiful job in describing what soul is. So the foundation is laid. So would you expand on that a little bit for everybody?
Yeah, and I can throw out a couple different things about that. The first of which is, how many people even use the word soul in their everyday life? And, if it's not a Kia Soul driving down the street, or it's not, soul music or soul food or something like that, it's not part of our vocabulary. And yet, again, in my world, it's the most precious part of who we are. It's that core of who we are. It's the hub of everything we do, consciously or unconsciously. So, when in our pursuit of modern life, if we can't even use the term, well, then number one, we're disconnected. But then secondly, to me, anybody who has ever traveled to more of a native culture or kind of an older society that's been around for hundreds of years, there is a different energy to them. And, in every native culture, every single native culture, they are much more connected with themselves, with their families, with the earth, with spirit. I mean, it's how they live. It's not something they have to try to work to get into their lives. Modern Americans are constantly trying to search for how to recreate spirituality or recreate, again, I'm going to use the word soul, but my guess is even on their quest, many of them don't use the word soul. They don't know what they're searching for, but really it's soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's that connection with themselves. So as we have, and again, I use the word disconnection, as we have disconnected with ourselves through striving to be, the head CEO, to have, the huge houses, the huge, numbers of cars, the everything, we have disconnected. I mean, I think about the amount of time people spend just on social media, and native cultures used to spend that amount of time in nature, or used to spend it connecting with nature, or doing rituals, or doing whatever it was that they needed to do in order to feel more soulful and enriched. We don't do much to fill our souls or feed our souls. And so every time some new modern convenience or something else comes up that we get obsessed with, it almost disconnects us. This most recent Pokemon game that's the new craze. I mean, you see these people walking around with a phone in front of them, falling into fountains and this and that, because they're not connected with themselves enough to be aware of their environments. It's just right now, it's to me a very clear indication of how disconnected we are, that something that we can hold in our hand and walk around with is much more important than being grounded and connecting with ourselves. So I could go on and on about this. This could be, probably an all-day workshop for how disconnected we are. But, the other thing is every native healer, so you think about shamans, curanderos, whatever culture that you were from, hundreds of years ago, they were spiritual healers before they were medical healers. the spiritual healers were the ones who learned the medical techniques. It's not the medical professionals who suddenly thought, "Ooh, we need to integrate spirituality." So, we have a very backwards approach to health and healing in our society. And I think that's why it's not really working.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a powerful, powerful reminder of being able to, and I couldn't agree more of this whole Pokemon craze being like the most clear indication of how disconnected we are. And I love the things people are saying, like, oh, people are getting more exercise because of it. I'm like, no, they're
right.
Like, sure, maybe, but there's no benefit in walking around with something, kind of right in front of your face versus being in touch with what's around you. So, and I love how you described that about, spiritual healing coming first before medical healing. And I think that one thing that still blows my mind as a mental health professional, as a psychotherapist, is how recent it is that we have moved to a place where we have tried to reconnect mind and body. Like, psychology as a whole tore those two things apart and saw them as so, first of all, the body is so irrelevant. And it was just so interesting to me how we did that. And now we're trying to, piece them back together. But how relatively new that is to us in terms of that very kind of traditional psychotherapy, when what you're talking about is historically and culturally, it's been something that spiritual healing has been something that was so connected for so long.
Well, and I want to throw this angle in there. I'm not so sure. In fact, I don't necessarily think it was psychology that did that. I think it was modern medicine that did it, because modern medicine has been around about 100 years longer than psychology has, because psychology is a relatively young field. Mm-hmm. But if you think about particularly, not so much Freud, he wasn't, into soul, but Jung. Jung was not that long after Freud, but Jungian theory is all about soul. He used the word soul. So I think it was actually modern medicine rather than psychology. But because modern medicine has ruled how psychology has gone, it has by default been taken out of our vocabulary. Yeah. So I'm right there with you. And, there's, like you said, mind-body medicine has really only been back, and I'm going to say back, I'm not going to say new.
Yes, I agree with that completely.
It's only been back for about the last 20, 25 years. And so, I kind of laugh when people say, "Oh, this is new," and it's really not new. It's new to our modern day because we're getting back to where we're supposed to be, really.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, and I do believe it's kind of that medical influence, that very, very heavy medical influence that kind of dismantled them that way. So, okay, so I'm so excited about this conversation, and I cannot wait to be able to share it with everybody. But as we kind of come to a close together, one thing that I always ask the people that I'm interviewing is, I'm not a big advice giver, but any words of wisdom or encouragement that you want to kind of share to the listeners as we kind of move towards closing out our time together today.
The first thing, someone asked me a few months ago, what would be your ultimate mission? And I said pretty quickly, my ultimate mission would be to get soul back into people's vocabulary. Because even saying the word helps people think about it, because of the fact that since it's reintroducing it to our vocabularies, it's really not new. But that would be the first thing, is to look for soul, look for the soulful events, look for the kinds of things that feed you, because the things that feed you, and I don't mean physically feed you, but the things that feed that soul part of you are really the things that are going to nourish you and enlighten you and enrich you and create that radiance. I think our country right now is in such a kind of quandary. The weight and obesity rates, again, a clear indication that we're off track. But, most people are trying to feed their bodies because they're so disconnected with their souls. So to me, it's looking for soul, but looking for alignment. Again, getting back to that word alignment. So again, a little bit bigger concept, but, first thing I would say is get soul back into your vocabulary, and then really take a look at what that's going to mean for you to be more soulful and to lead a more soul-based life.
Oh, so beautiful. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time and taking a leap of faith for us to be able to connect and spend this time together today, especially because we did meet on good old social media.
Yes, it's perfect. But there are good things about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I so appreciate your time today, and just am excited for us to be able to kind of continue this relationship and continue to build from here.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
So that was a great episode with Katherine. I know there was a lot of things that just really stood out in that interview. And honestly, listening back to it, there's just so much that I realized I integrated without even really knowing. And what's funny is we talked a little bit about my daughter in the interview. And what was so interesting is that literally, I've never thought about how we define our soul. And Katherine described it as it's the essence of who we are. And I love that description. But oddly enough, maybe 3 days after we recorded this episode, my daughter, my 4-year-old, asked me what her soul was. And we were listening to some music and it said something about, our soul or your soul. And so of course her little ears are listening to everything. And she asked me that question. And first I was like, oh crap, how am I going to answer this question? And then I realized that I had this answer and I had this whole new appreciation and insight about soul health after talking with Katherine. And then I had to figure out, how do I break down, our soul being the essence of who we are to a 4-year-old? And so I kind of found some ways to do it and kind of fumbled around it. But I'm so grateful to the interview with Katherine because it allowed me to be prepared for a question that I had no idea how to answer. And I was able to do it in that moment, which was a really cool mom moment. Now, funny thing is that we were also listening to, Mama, Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. It's like my son's favorite song. Who knows? He's also 4. But in it, they talk about let them be doctors and lawyers and stuff. So sure enough, a few days after the soul question, my daughter asked what a lawyer is, which was equally difficult to explain to a 4-year-old of what a lawyer is and what our soul is. So it was a hard week of questions for my little girl, but I was excited to have her asking me and being able to hopefully answer them in a way that made sense to her. I love this idea that Katherine has about being able to put soul back into our vocabulary, and that really is, her mission, and that really being able to kind of evolve in our wellness is being able to connect with our soul as something that is just this huge ability of self-appreciation and self-love, and just really, really powerful. I think the other thing that really stood out for me with the time with Dr. Kelly was her talking about this kind of research that says that we have 60,000 thoughts a day and that 2/3 of them are negative. And I've never heard that statistic before, but man, did it blow me away. If we're consistently putting negative things into our mind, our body, our soul on a regular basis and in such gross disproportion to the positive, that being able to really move to self-appreciation exercises is vital to our well-being. And that was something that I really integrated into my daily life and also in my work with clients. So I'm just really grateful for the time that we got to sit down and talk together. So I'm really excited to hear how you guys enjoyed the interview, what your takeaways were. Please always reach out to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com and also via the SpeakPipe app. It is so much fun to be able to get your guys' voice feedback and just hear your voices and connect with you guys. I feel like when I get to hear your live voices, it connects me with you in a whole different way. And also I encourage you guys, head over to the website to herlifeunscripted.com and click on the retreats tab. There's a little box to fill in. It's kind of like an interest list. We've got some amazing live events happening in 2017, and I really want to make sure that you guys are on the list. Even if you don't know if you can attend, you just want more information, go ahead and pop over to the website now and be able to do that. I also really encourage you to head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. Let us know what you think about the show. Leave a review. I love to hear what you guys are loving, what you'd like more of, and just, being able to really share this space with you. So thank you so much for letting me into your world, into your hearts. I'm truly, truly grateful for this time. And I hope all of you are doing a lot of work right now, or at least have the intention of being able to turn inward and use that space to connect with the essence of you in your soul, and also to be able to nurture whatever pain or hardships you're struggling with right now. Lots of love to you all. Take care.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.